Although Revolutionary Girl Utena is not primarily known for its action and combat, the duels are a consistent and important part of the series. So I thought it'd be fun to go through each of them and rank them from the vermin at the bottom to the cat's meow at the top. Sorry, movie and manga fans, this is show only, and of course it's all subjective. I'm judging each duel by primarily 3 criteria. Number 1, the actual fight choreography and action, like how good are they as fights. Number 2, the character motivations and personal stakes of the matchup, i.e. the story stuff. And then number 3, a little bit less important to me usually, is the music, which sometimes is that extra little X factor that can elevate a duel. Also, I have tried to remove my own biases for certain characters. It still could crop up in some ways, it's kind of hard to completely separate it, but I tried to let go of which characters are my favorite or least favorite for this. And last note, if it wasn't an official duel, I did not count it. I am sorry, fellow Cowbell of Happiness fans. I hope we can all accept this and move on. Number 21, Keiko. During this fight, 0% of me believed that Keiko was actually going to defeat Utena and kill Anthy. There was no way. Like, literally, Utena's first words here are, "I know you," and that's about the extent of their connection. And at the end, Utena even admits she didn't know her opponent's name. Keiko may be using Toga's sword, but she is not a Toga-level threat, and her target is muddled because, sure, she wants to kill Anthy so she doesn't distract Toga anymore. That kind of tracks. But her real problem is Nanami, who isn't even in the fight at all. This is the penultimate Black Rose duel before Mikage, and it shouldn't have been. Number 20, Kanae. Just like Utena herself, the audience has had barely any time to get to know Kanae before she shows up to fight. She is overshadowed in her own focus episode by introductory stuff about Akio and Mikage, and so this feels less like the first serious Black Rose duel and more like a tutorial. I do like that Kanae has a real reason to kill Anthy specifically, but what I don't like is that she has no reason to fight Utena. It's a fast fight that only stands out because it's the first Black Rose duel, but in my opinion, we see better later. Number 19, Saionji 1. This fight is of course iconic because it's the first duel in all of Utena, and it is always interesting to see someone else other than Utena drawing forth the Sword of Dios. Although Utena doesn't initiate the fight or really understand it yet, there are some good stakes because of how Utena wants to stand up to this jerk on Anthy's behalf. The duel song's also pretty fun to sing along to, and it builds nicely at the end. But this is ranked so low because the fight loses momentum partway through when the two have to stop so that Saionji can explain things to Utena, and also explain it to the audience. And I can't be the only one who never really cared for Utena beating the kendo captain with a broken stick. I think the series will do better than this first fight. Number 18, Ruka. In general, the third arc fights are the flashiest and best looking in the series. But you can tell that Ruka's heart really isn't in this fight. He admits that he might not be able to win, since Utena has already beaten such talented duelists before, and it's like Ruka is easily able to dodge her swings and have all the advantage in the world, possibly even being the best duelist since he can beat Juri, until suddenly Ruka has to lose because of the plot. Ruka sees Anthy near Utena and says that he understands. And probably he does. He probably knows that's the real reason he's losing is because of Anthy. When he loses, it's Shiori who's slumped over in the car wreck. He's just standing there, unsurprised. Number 17, Shiori. The previous 2 Black Rose duelists, chronologically, had a direct reason to kill Anthy. But Shiori doesn't, and Utena has only met her, once in this episode. But it is cool how Shiori really rocks that menacing Black Rose tone with her aggressive adaptation of Juri's fighting style. The fight excitingly starts with them dashing through the desks, and the duel song has this part that kicks in at a minute and a half that is so good. Number 16, Mitsuru. There's something really dark about seeing a nice kid like Mitsuru get this twisted. Borderline Joker mode. I also like how he adapts Nanami's reckless and rule-breaking fighting style by just destroying the environment and lunging at Utena. With his two blades, you could also imagine that one represents his relationship with Nanami, the other represents his adoration for Toga. There's some nice thematic things going on, paralleling with Nanami's duel when Utena uses the power of Dios to send his big sword flying. And that visual gag with the sword crashing into the big statue, only to be caught by the little one, it's really cute. Number 15, Nanami 2. I love Nanami and her very extra pose on the car hood, but her motivations aren't very clear here. Nanami wants to beat Utena to surpass everything and everyone, such that when she does lose at the end, she is sobbing and wondering if all that's left for her now is to be one more fly in an enormous swarm. But this is one of those fights that feels obligatory with a foregone conclusion. Also, Nanami only has one sword now, which, makes sense because she's fighting more for herself, not as reliant on her brother's power anymore, but it does make her style less unique visually and mechanically, and she's defeated with the generic third arc victory swoop, and we move on. Number 14, Toga 1. The setup is excellent. Toga has been the looming student council president this whole time, and now he's gotten it into Utsuna's head that he may in fact be her prince. He's clearly in control during the duel, chastising her, nearly stabbing her in the face, and the conclusion, where Utsuna hesitates and lets him win, it makes sense. Still, for how this was built up, and how well it was built up, I say, the fight is a bit anticlimactic to me. Toga stands there waiting for Utsuna to strike him, and when there is action, a lot of it is off-screen or cut off or viewed from far away. And I'm not really a fan of the still frame effect that starts the duel. It feels like this episode cut corners when really this was a bigger moment and maybe should have had a more focus to it if possible. I was a bit disappointed by this duel, and it's only really so high in this list because it is such a big deal story-wise. Number 13, Saionji 3. It's cool that the duel song here is a remix of the second Utena ending theme, and it can be very striking the first time you see all the cars shoot out of the ground, but this feels a lot like setup for the third arc rather than Saionji's big moment. It's better than the tutorial that was Kanae's fight, but it still feels a bit off to me. Saionji is very confident and carries an air of enlightenment, but the show's been pretty vague, and I think a lot of viewers are going to be a little uncertain as far as what's going on with Saionji and why he's so motivated now. I think in terms of character motivations for the student council members, his is not one of the strongest to do this rematch. My favorite part about the duel, though, is when the Sword of Dios suddenly vanishes, leaving Utsuna defenseless. Utsuna's words start replaying in Anthy's mind, and suddenly she pushes Utsuna out of the way from what could have been a finishing move. Anthy meddles with the duels occasionally, especially if you believe her magic is the reason for a lot of the outcomes. But in this particular case, she literally puts herself in danger by lunging to save Utsuna. And from this point on, in this duel and in duels afterward, it's no longer the Sword of Dios being drawn. It is instead power drawn from within Utsuna herself, power drawn from the bond between Utsuna and Anthy. Number 12, Kozue. All of the duels up to this point have been somewhat disappointing to me. From here on out, we're looking at duels that I think are at least okay, at least pretty good. And this one with Kozue is no exception. While Utsuna only sorta knows Kozue as her friend's sister, Kozue has a very specific reason to kill Anthy, so that she can have Mickey's attention all to herself. Kozue assumes Mickey's stance, and turns her sword so it reflects Utsuna's image, just like how Mickey had done the same thing in his duel. Also, the music kicks off with this nice drum part at the start, and the 3, 2, 1, 0, takeoff part is great. Shout out, by the way, to Anthy sipping the Kaoru milkshake in the background. Love that for her. Number 11, Saionji 2. This is the first duel Utsuna actually chooses to fight, with an understanding of what it even means. And yes, this is a rematch and it can feel a bit redundant for that reason. It still feels more official than what we got in episode 1. The duel song also has this imposing start. Saionji isn't taking her lightly anymore either, and he goes in aggressively, sending Utsuna on the defense right away. I like that switch between Duel 1 and Duel 2. I also love that when he says, "Witness my true power," Saionji freaking kicks Utsuna. Like, is that a kendo move? Is that a thing he's learned over the years? I like that a lot. And when Utena eventually does win, not only does she cut off his rose, she even cuts his sword. You can read into that about like some sort of emasculation, castration thing. I just think it's pretty metal, cutting the metal. Also, this is the first appearance of Dios descending, and it's pretty dramatic. I also like how Toga watching this adds an element of weight, and the song ends with that loud Ammonite, which I think is pretty nifty. Number 10, Mickey 1. What makes this work so well is that Mickey has gotten a lot of development before the fight. He's friends with Utena, so it has the weight of a betrayal that he would fight her, and he really wants the Rose Bride, which is something, surprisingly, the majority of duelists in Utena don't really care about possessing Anthy, other than Saionji and Mickey and, occasionally some other people. But this is one of those cases where, yeah, Mickey has a reason. The duel is also the culmination of a two-parter, and the flashbacks that occur throughout the fight give us insights into Mickey's resolve. Mickey is actually fighting pretty aggressively here, even as they're both giving each other compliments. Utena can be heard breathing deeply, which shows that it's taking a toll on her to fight like this. But what ends up shaking Mickey's resolve is when Anthy roots for Utena to beat him, saying like, "Go get him," or "Go beat him," something like that. And everything slips away. And this fits perfectly with the song, repeating over and over, "My, my, my, my." It speaks to a sort of desperation. And with that aggressive ending, it's like someone's losing all control. The duel ends with a great shot of the sunlit garden photo cracking before the bells dong their dings. Number 9, Mikage. Big battle lead up on account of this being the big bad of the Black Roses. The framed photos of Tokiko and Mamiya on the desk, it's a nice touch. There's also some good back and forths between Utena and Mikage, while the background music is churning and there's this electric guitar shredding the stage. With Mikage's suit and color scheme, and Mamiya mirroring Anthy, this feels in some ways like Utena is facing her own shadow. Mikage even pulls a "we're not so different, you and I," over their shared reasons to go on fighting, their shared memories of those important fleeting meetings of people that are now gone. Granted, he still believes he's fighting Tokiko. Until the curtains fall, the magic trick is revealed, and Mikage learns, or rather remembers, some awful truths. My interpretation personally is that Anthy is purposefully revealing these things to Mikage, so that he loses his edge and Utena can win. I chalk it up to magic. Judging by the phone call with Akio at the end, I'm also thinking this was part of the greater plan of Akio as well. Number 8, Toga 2. In terms of arc-culminating face-offs, I'd give the second battle with Toga the slight edge over the Mikage fight. This is the first time that Utena has ever been the one to initiate a duel challenge, and we even get a lead-up to the fight wherein Juri gives Utena her sword to use. The stakes feel high, and now it feels like it's all for real. Not only does Toga use the Sword of Dios, but he powers it up in a way we've never seen before, and I don't think ever see again, by having Anthy abandon her body to protect the sword. Anthy starts thinking about how Utena can't defeat Master Toga. She hopes it goes quick. And meanwhile, Toga, for his part, is ridiculing Utena, calling her pathetic. Everything feels stacked in Toga's favor, as it should, because this is the big culminating fight. And then it eventually ends when Utena keeps fighting on. She perseveres. And Anthy, in that moment, is reminded of something from her past. Reminded, perhaps, of Dios, of that prince. And her power fades away from Toga's blade, which allows Utena an opportunity to win. Yes, win with half a weapon. But at least this time it's a sword, and not a broken stick. Number 7, Nanami 1. Utena very quickly defeats Nanami and cuts off her rose. It's the fastest win for Utena up to this point. See, Nanami isn't as skilled of a duelist as her brother, or the kendo captain, or the fencing captain, or the second best fencer. But what makes Nanami an interesting duelist is that she doesn't care about the rules. About 50 seconds into the music, it shifts into this dramatic choral part, around the same time that Nanami's sense of resolve is growing. And then, at around 1 minute and 20 seconds, the music turns aggressive, building and building to the final repetition of evolution, revolution, and the lingering feedback after the duel is over. All while, at this time, Nanami straight up tries to kill Utena. She only stops because Toga has commanded her to, at which point her blade shatters, a piece of it ricocheting and cutting her hair. There are few duels in Utena that do so much for their focus character or tie in so well to their episode's conflicts. Number 6, Jury 1. This is my pick for the best fight in the first arc. While not a two-parter like Mickey's, this episode gives the audience a real sense of Juri's pain and resolve. Juri is the fencing captain, and clearly she is the biggest threat that Utena has faced so far. Utena goes on the offensive early on, gets aggressive, but Juri deflects her easily. Utena again goes in, only for Juri to dodge and shove her, seemingly with ease. Juri mocks Utena before going on the offensive herself, a turn which ends with her sword pointed just inches from Utena's cheek. Juri would have won. She was the better fighter and possibly even had the stronger will. But then, a miracle happened. The out-of-nowhere and unearned result could feel cheap, but I think it feels so thematically perfect for Juri to lose this way, to lose to a miracle. And when you realize Anthy's power and Akio's power, it can get recontextualized in a very cool way that miracle might have been manufactured. There's parts in this fight where the animation is smooth, and the duel song has this oppressive quality that starts out measured and precise, but then at the end repeats over and over about a hollowness inside, all of which feels very fitting for Juri in particular. Number 5, Mickey 2. There's plenty of stuff in here to psychoanalyze. And I'm not just talking about the lyrics, regarding nothing changing in the past, blurring into the present, blurring into the future. No, I'm also talking about Kozue dressed as a rose bride, with her brother as the would-be groom. I'm talking about how Kozue leans in to kiss Anthy in the car, Mickey's sister with Mickey's sister figure, and him being teased to pay attention, or he's going to lose, only for Mickey, in fact, to lose, likely from not paying attention. Mickey takes an aggressive start, lunging before they begin their run, and he has this strength of resolve we've never gotten to see from him before. The animation is super smooth and the music is so good, especially with how it shifts and accelerates into this frenzy as Mickey fights for control. Number 4, Juri 2. The duels in the third arc are generally the biggest and most dramatic, and when Juri, the fencing captain, is given this treatment, what do you know, it leads to a good fight. The intro is heavy, almost terrifying. The music reminds me of some of the boss music that's in Nier Gestalt and Nier Replicant. As Utena rushes forward and Juri deflects, we keep getting these cuts to Juri practicing with Ruka, which I think helps us understand her mindset and her history. At one point, Juri even has her blade pointed at Utena's neck, but pulls away, very similar to how she had her blade on Utena's cheek in the original first duel. Juri keeps Utena on the defensive, and we cut to Ruka's words about the nature of miracles, how you get them by standing on the backs of others. And in a surprising twist, Utena does not cut off Juri's rose, she cuts off Juri's locket. Staggering forward and breaking down, Juri herself tears off her own rose, before the rain begins to downpour, likely losing a few tears in that rain. It's an emotional fight, with both internal and external struggling. Remember, folks, Utena never beat Juri in a duel. Number 3, Akio. At this point, my top 3 really could switch on any given day. I mean, this is the final fight, and it really does feel like it. The reverberating bell tolling ominously rings in this last duel, which is a gauntlet through imagery from the main 3 arcs. This is Utena fighting against her fallen prince, who she also is in love with, who she also knows has been hurting Anthy Himemiya. Akio emphasizes that this fight is not like the other duels. This is not a game, this is real, and if she doesn't stop, he promises that Utena will learn how horrible real combat is. The fight feels dynamic, with plenty of back and forth moments of who is on the offensive versus who is on the defensive. Akio seems to have the lead early on, but Utena's determination is unwavering. She declares that she is going to be a prince, and it shatters stone statues, it causes the lights to freak out, and finally, it even sends the castle where eternity dwells crumbling down. Anthy, as if on cue, stands up, and Akio's eyes widen with a realization. Utena is giving it her all, and Utena actually has a chance of winning this on her own terms, without Anthe's assistance. Akio can't let that happen, so he pushes Anthe and Utena's way and uses her interference for his benefit this time. The fight ends with Anthe literally stabbing Utena in the back, in one of the most shocking series of events in the entire series. A series of why did I write it like that? Number 2, Wakaba. This is easily my favorite Black Rose duel. The character stakes are through the roof. This is Utena's friend. She does not want to fight her. In fact, Utena never even draws her weapon. Anthe keeps urging her to fight because she knows that if Utena gives in, this is the Black Rose duelist that actually could win. Wakaba has a personal reason to kill Anthe, because Anthe took her Saionji from her. We also get flashbacks from all the way back in episode 1 that remind us of how Wakaba has always looked at Saionji from afar. By the way, the wooden leaf on the desks is the most effective desk item in the Black Rose arc, and it ain't even close. Since Wakaba is channeling Saionji's power and style, this is sort of like a repeat of the first 2 duels of the series, but it really feels like now it's elevated to a new level of intensity. Wakaba picks up Utena by her hair, holds her blade against her friend's neck, and delivers some of the most heart-wrenching dialogue in the series about how special people like Utena and the student council members trample over normal people like her and the other Black Rose duelists. And that imagery of them locking hands, struggling against each other, but also, in a way, holding hands while Utena assures Wakaba of their friendship, saying that she's going to save her. It's just so good! And it culminates in Utena prying Wakaba's sword loose and using Saionji's weapon to cut off the rose. As Wakaba loses, as she falls back, a single tear slides down her cheek, not unlike the last time Saionji had cut so close to her heart. And my number 1, Toga 3. There's been so much relationship building up to this point between Utena and Toga, and we also see so much development between Toga and Saionji. This is the first time a duelist is actively trying to help Utena by defeating her. Toga is her last hope, and the last chance someone has of thwarting Akio's trap last minute. So as a viewer, you might find yourself questioning who to root for. And it's also the little things. How Saionji isn't grinning wickedly in the car or teasing anyone or even reacting much at all. Instead, he's stoic, detached, seemingly more knowledgeable, mature than he ever was before. When Toga pulls Utena in close, it's not to manipulate her, but because he genuinely seems to care for her and wants to protect her. Suddenly, the fight goes wild, with cars flying all around, Toga standing still amidst the rush, only to disappear among the oncoming traffic. Cars careening, Utena and Anthe calling out for each other, Utena cutting each car in half in rapid succession. Bam, 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 bam! It's awesome. Then there's Toga and Saionji together in the sidecar, leading to a final collision that results in Toga and Saionji in defeat, lying on their backs together, musing about what's next. And Utena walking away with Anthe toward destiny and toward apocalypse. Not only does this fight feature the song with the funniest title, but it's also my favorite duel in all of Utena. Again, that is all very subjective, and if you happen to have very different interpretations of the duels, or very different preferences for the duels, I'd be curious to hear which duels are your favorite in the comments below. And if you're looking for more Revolutionary Girl Utena content and analysis, we've got plenty of that on this channel. From an overview of the creators and influences, to in-depth examinations of specific characters like Miki Kaoru, and a video speculating what might have happened had Wakaba actually won her duel against Utena. Until next time, for the revolution of the world, ciao!